Hello, BookTube. It's Tag Tuesday, and I have a tag video for you today. But before I do that, just a little bit of a life update. You can't really see from the angle here, but if I raise my arm up, you'll see that I have a bandage on it. I had elbow surgery last Wednesday. And so I will have this big cast on my arm for another week or so. And we'll be recovering from that for a while. And it's been pretty manageable, but some of the small things in life have proven to be a bit of a challenge. So I guess I haven't really felt incredibly motivated to make any videos in the last week, but I've been kind of sitting on this one particular tag video and wanted to work through it with you. So anyway, so if it looks like I'm sort of fumbling around or not very well coordinated today, that's due to my arm. I kind of have some use of it, but just some movements are just kind of awkward. But anyway, without further ado, I'm going to do the Seriously Well Read book tag today. It was created by Randy Ray at The Literate Texan. I was tagged by John at Must Read More. And I think this video has been out for at least a month, and as I tend to do, I tend to overthink a lot of things, and as I was sort of going through the questions, I just wasn't sure at first how I wanted to answer them and what books I wanted to include, and just how I wanted to present it. So, but anyway, I'm just gonna go with it. Let me see here. All right. First question. What book made you take reading seriously? There wasn't like a single book. There wasn't a moment in time I can point to and just go, yeah, I didn't really think much about reading before, but now that I've read this, I'm just all kinds of excited about it, and I'm going to be a reader from here on out. But I did read quite a bit as a kid, and I read a lot of children's books, of course. But even at a fairly young age, I read what I think are some serious things. And so I'm going to hold up a book you've probably never heard of. This is called Daniel and the Revelation by Uriah Smith. It is a commentary on the biblical books of Daniel and Revelation. And yes, I was a religious kid raised in a religious household. And this book was kind of one of the, alongside of the Bible, there were a handful of books that were regarded as almost inspired. And so that this book was regarded very reverently, and it's actually, even though you might think a commentary is something that would be pretty dry, this was pretty accessible, and I just sort of found it really thrilling. The whole Bible prophecy thing. For those of you who might not be that familiar with it. In Daniel, the Israelites are taken to Babylon. Babylon has conquered Jerusalem, and so Daniel is one of the exiles, and he is put in the court of the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar, and so a bunch of things happen, and pretty central to the book and Daniel's story is these visions or dreams he has. But starts off with King Nebuchadnezzar actually having a dream, and he can't get his magicians and sorcerers and other court people who are supposed to be knowledgeable in the matter of dreams to interpret it for him. And so then he gets mad and he's going to put all the wise men to death. But Daniel has become one of the wise men, he and his three friends. And so they're kind of saying, well, wait a minute, maybe, you didn't call us. Maybe we can let us go pray to our God and we'll, wait for an answer from him. And so Nebuchadnezzar has this dream about this image, and the head is of gold, and the chest and arms are silver, the waist is of brass, and the legs are of iron, and the toes are of iron and clay, and those denote successive kingdoms: Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome, that were real kingdoms and in history. So anyway, there was a lot of kind of fun stuff in it, I thought, and I think that was the type of book I read pretty early on that I just sort of gravitated to, and the book actually had some illustrations which I thought were really neat too. I'm going to try and hold this up. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it. But it's the picture there is portraying Cyrus of the Medes and Persians, and he is the Persians conquered Babylon, it is said, by diverting the river Euphrates out of its channel, and the Persian army just went underneath the walls and then came up into the center of Babylon. And so I thought that stuff like this was just really cool. This book was written in the late 1800s, and I'm actually kind of doing a reread of it now. So yeah, kind of interesting to read a book like this that I haven't read probably for 20, 30 years. I'm sure I've read selections from it from time to time, but yeah, so just sort of going back to some old reads for me. Bear with me. Here we go. Question 2: what book did you pretend to understand, to be honest? Yeah, I can't say I've ever pretended to understand a book that I didn't understand, but certainly there were some books I read that I don't think I understood very well. For a book club many years ago, I read Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses, and that was not really an easy book to follow. And I also read another book of his. I think it was called The Midnight's Children. And it was sort of equally, a bit obscure. There are other books that I think have, that I have gotten through that I thought were pretty difficult. I took in graduate school, took a course on Marxism, and somehow I managed to pass the class, but the things we read, I don't think I understood very well. So things like that. But usually, if I'm not enjoying a book, or if I'm not understanding a book very well, it's pretty likely that I'm not enjoying it. And if I'm not enjoying it, I'm pretty likely to put it down and not finish it. But because I guess for either for class or for a book club, even if I didn't understand the Satanic Verses very well, then I was going to read it anyway, so I could talk about it when we met. But yeah, so I guess I would say those books. Number 3: which 3 books are on your personal reading list? And again, this is a question that I think could be answered in a lot of different ways. And I think so the books I'm choosing for this list are I'm not necessarily saying these are the greatest books in the history of civilization ever, but they are books that have stayed with me. Mostly books that I read as a young adult. And so, yeah, I'll get to those now. The first of these is The Stand. I don't know if I read this probably in my late teens or early 20s. It looks like it was first published in 1978 or 1980. And this particular version of The Stand is the original Stand, or at least The Stand as it was first published. Later in the 80s, Stephen King came out with an expanded version of The Stand that included material that had not been included in the original version, but that had been part of his manuscripts and his first or second drafts or what have you, but material that was cut out when they ultimately decided to publish this. But anyway, so this is the original as I understand it, and this is a book you've probably heard talked about on BookTube before, but it's a post-apocalyptic kind of story. A great flu has struck the United States and presumably much of the world, and 98% of the population or something dies, and the remaining 2% kind of separate into two camps, and they are, each side is sort of led by people, quasi supernatural beings of very different aims. It's in a way a very much a kind of a good versus bad, good versus evil kind of story, but I think it's presented in more more nuanced, sort of subtle ways than that. But multi-characters in the story, and it was just one of the first books I read that really just I found myself thinking about a lot and coming back to frequently. And I guess it was maybe last year, I sort of reread parts of it, but didn't reread the whole thing. But I have read The Stand several times, and it continues to be a book that just has just sort of has a lot of has had a pretty sizable impact in one way or another. Another book is probably, again, not much of a surprise for booktubers. This is 1984 by George Orwell. It's also I don't know if I'd call it a post-apocalyptic book, but is a book about totalitarian society, and the sort of the main character is a member of this. He's a member of the ruling party, but the party is forever sort of eating itself and conducting witch hunts against its own members, and continually killing off people as a way to enforce or to create fear and enforce conformity, and ultimately to prevent any challenges to the inner party's rule, and because the inner party just revels in it. They revel in the cruelty and the fear and the sadism of it. And it's just a book, again, another book I've reread several times. It's a book that never really seems to go out of style. I think it I probably first read it maybe back in the 80s. maybe early 90s. And it's just has never, it's not a book that has ever felt like it has aged out of whatever era we are in. The third book is a little different. This is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Again, another well-known book whose, although I think on BookTube it's a book that has many people love it. Some people, if they don't hate it, they think it's not that great or it's overexposed. And this is the original copy that I bought back in 1995 or 1996 and is kind of falling apart. It was published, it looks like, in 1992. Donna Tartt is on her own, sort of a fascinating figure and writer. She has to date, I believe, written 3 books. She publishes a book like every decade. After The Secret History was her first book, and it's set in a New England college and is the story of a small select group of students who study Greek and are sort of obsessed with Greek history and Greek culture. And I read it when I was just starting graduate school around age 30, and so I was a few years older than the protagonist in this book, but I was close enough to that age and experience that it really resonated with me and left a mark with me. And again, I've reread it several times. Haven't reread it in quite a while, and probably wouldn't or won't at this stage, but it's kind of a must keep for me. It was just, I guess, the time in which I read it, it just really left an impact and has sort of been always kind of a point of comparison to other books, and has just really, really fascinating to me. Next question. What author have you been avoiding? I don't know if there's an author that I'm really avoiding exactly, but I think I have struggled and am a little intimidated by the major Russian authors, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. I have War and Peace that I bought a few years ago. I'm afraid it's highly unlikely that I'm ever going to read that book or read the whole thing, but you never know. I have read a part of the Brothers Karamazov, I want to say, and that was sort of interesting. I just didn't finish it. One of the, I think, notoriously challenging things about that book is, I don't remember if it's like characters having different names or characters having the same name or whatever it is, but there are parts of that book that are not easy to follow. So I don't know if it's one of Tolstoy's books or one of Dostoevsky's that is on Randy Ray's Seriously Well-Read Book Club, which I am participating in. So I may end up reading one of the books by these authors this year. So, but I think being a part of a book group would definitely help me to finish or to take on some of these authors. 5. What's the hardest book you've ever finished? Ooh, that's a tough one. Again, as I said earlier, if I'm having a hard time with a book, my tendency is to not finish it. So to say there was a hard book that I finished is kind of a hard question to answer. I would probably point again to the Salman Rushdie books, The Satanic Verses, Midnight's Children, that were not easy reads and were pretty hard to finish. I would probably add The Sound and Fury by William Faulkner. In a strange way, I kind of enjoyed that book, even though I don't think I understood it well, and I think definitely was at times kind of having trouble getting through it. There's a lot of sort of stream of consciousness going on, and a lot of dreamlike sort of occurrences, and so you're not really sure whether you're in reality or not, or you're just in someone's thoughts. Or again, that was many years ago, but and I do think I finished it. So yeah, so I guess I would say William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury. Number 6. What's a book that changed how you read? I didn't have an answer for this question for the first few times I looked at this video, but I'm gonna hold up this book here. This is The Fidelity of Betrayal Towards a Church Beyond Belief, written by Peter Rollins. And in connection with my religious upbringing and my religious life, I went through a period of deconstruction or challenging, questioning my faith about 20 years ago. And that time occurred probably not long after the emergence of the what are sometimes called the New Atheists and the New Atheist literature. Sam Harris's The End of Faith, Christopher Hitchens' book, Richard Dawkins, those books. But there were also a number of sort of faith questioning books, or at least religious Christianity questioning books that emerged around the same time. And I think this was one of the better ones, and I haven't read this book in quite a while, and I had actually unhauled this book, and others like it, and then when I was looking at this this book tag and this book tag question, I kind of got to thinking, you know what book I think would be a good response to this question? That book I don't have anymore, and I don't remember the title of it, and I don't think I remember the name of the author, but yeah, that book would be a good response to this question. So I had to, and I kind of thought, maybe it might be good to have that book again, just for fun. And so with a little help from Chat GPT and AI and the inner tubes, I was able to throw some words in and retraced this book and its author and reordered it for a pretty modest price. I guess I could have just gone through my Amazon list of books purchased, and I could have gotten it from there as well. But yeah, so maybe that's sort of but anyway, I think that's can sometimes be a bit of a warning for the book unhauling process of before I really unhaul a book, really make sure this is maybe not something that I might want to hold on to, and particularly if it's not well known and I might have trouble retrieving it or finding it again. So anyway, I was kind of happy to get another copy of this book. I don't know if it has aged particularly well, or maybe just my own set of concerns have sort of moved beyond the questions and issues of of these authors, but they did help me. They didn't cause me to question my faith, but they more or less gave me a voice and were, I think, responding to questions that had started to emerge. And the conservative fundamentalist evangelical religious culture is not a culture that particularly encourages questions or is very good at handling them or encourages critical thinking. And so, I mean, I have kind of I actually did return to the faith of my my original faith community, I guess you could say, but I don't think about it in the same way that I used to. And yeah, I think sometimes when you've seen a thing or read a thing, you can't unsee it, but you can re-engage with it in a different way for different reasons. And so yeah, so that's that. Number 7, quality versus quantity. Would you rather read 100 good books or 10 great books? I was kind of surprised when I listened to Randy Ray's answer to this and listened to other booktubers answer this question. I guess I automatically assumed that most people would say 10 great books. But everyone that I've seen who's done this video has said they would rather have read 100 good books. And and each video, each booktuber, I think, had slightly different reasons for that. And I think I've come down on that side too. And I think it has to do with what I think it means to be well read and what it is that I'm seeking in my reading experiences. And so I think having read 100 books, I think is, of course, to say that you would prefer reading 10 really great books is not to foreclose on the idea that you actually did read 100 books through a year or over a period of time. But I think it's more important that there are 100 books that I could say were at least good, that I thought were influential and informative for me. So number 8, which genre are you embarrassed to not have read? I can't say I'm really embarrassed about not having read a particular genre, but I'd have to say I have no background or experience or reading Shakespeare's plays. I guess I must have read one or two in high school, but it's not, plays are not the genre that if that's even a genre. But plays are not what I really gravitate to. And I know on BookTube a lot of people like the plays, or at least Shakespeare. So maybe I'll get around to reading some of the plays. Yeah. Number 9, which book do you think most people misread? Which book do you think most people misread? A couple people have answered the Bible for this question, and I think that's a good response for a number of different reasons. But I thought, just to be a little more original, I would say I'm going to go with one book of the Bible, and that's the book of Revelation. And I'm not a scholar of the Bible or the book of Revelation, but I have read several books about it, and there are several different schools of thought, different paradigms, I guess you could say, different lenses through which the book of Revelation is read. And I think almost all of them leave some gaps and some holes that are not satisfying. and that I think sort of people end up reading the book through, with sort of blinders on, and they don't really challenge what they read. So I'm sort of thinking about maybe doing a Book of Revelation starter kit sometime. So if there's any interest in that, please let me know. Again, I'm not a scholar, but I have read. I am familiar with the major schools of thought, and have thought about them a little bit, and can add my own 2 cents for whatever that is worth. And finally, number 10, what does seriously well read mean to you? Well, that's a big open question, and again, I think it could mean a lot of different things. I think for me, it means, at the very least, being fairly well read in the major literary canon. Those books, the classics, many of the books that Randy Ray is including in his book club for the year. So I think that's, I am not well read in the classics or in the literary canon, and so one of my attractions to BookTube was to maybe facilitate that and find some booktubers who would maybe make those books approachable, and so that kind of started me on my BookTube journey. But I also think that being well read includes being interested in and having read about different cultures and having a fairly reasonable grasp on the developments of world history, and kind of having an appreciation for changes over time. I think it also goes to being seriously well read, goes to being a thoughtful, caring reader and a critical thinker. I think it's possible to read lots of books and sort of check them off your to-do list, but maybe if you haven't, or if I haven't, really appreciated those books or valued them or gotten anything from them, then I don't know that I would consider myself seriously well read just because I read some of the big names. But I do think that that's at least a start. But I think it has both a quantitative and a qualitative dimension. Certainly the number and range of books is important, but the way we approach reading and what we seek to gain from it is important too. So anyway, I was afraid that this was going to be a long kind of rambly video, and this has, I'm afraid it has. It's clocking in at about 33 minutes as we speak. So, all right, thank you for Randy Ray for creating the tag, and thank you for John at Must Read More for tagging me. I really appreciate it. And with that, I will sign off until the next time. Take care, BookTube.